Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on TalkTV. We're talking to Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum, and a man who knows a thing or two about history. And it might have amused you to see this one, Rafe, that curators of the Mary Rose Museum decided that they wanted to use queerness as an interpretative tool to link objects, including a mirror, some combs and a gold ring, to present-day understandings of LGBT sexualities during Tudor times. What do you make of it?
Well, you know, they always say August is silly season for news, and there's definitely rags right up there. We're talking about a ship, Henry VIII's flagship, that was launched in 1511, long before there was even any notion of homosexuality and so forth. You know, Churchill is alleged to have once said that the three traditions of the Royal Navy are rum, sodomy, and the lash.
Yes.
So there certainly was, Roger the cabin boy would have probably been looking over his shoulder quite frequently in a prison-style setting like that. But the idea that, there's a queer identity to the lives of the Tudors is absolute tosh and nonsense.
Yes.
But I think that, the museum here was missing a trick here. We just had Pride Month. I'm surprised they didn't have a drag queen called Mary Rose dressed up as the ship's figurehead, walking around handing out.
It is amazing, isn't it? It's like, could we possibly draw, some completely made-up narrative gently towards the truth of history? And let's rewrite history after all. Why don't we just rewrite all of it? And why just go all the way back to the beginning, all the way back to Adam and Eve, and just come up with a completely different story of how it all happened?
But that's what we're getting. We're getting the rewriting of our history. This is almost like going back just to the year zero. And the great problem here, of course, this is just part of the larger march through the institutions that we've seen. And the most distressing areas are where we see it in education and in our museums, from the National Trust to the British Museum, the British Library, decolonising their collections, because, of course, young minds are being shaped by visits to the Mary Rose, by visits to the British Museum, and they're getting all of this critical race theory and gender ideology at schools is then being reinforced in perverted ways by having history literally twisted. This is what happened in communist regimes, of course, where you just totally subverted the reality and the truth. And that's why we're seeing, for the first time ever, amongst those under 25, a hardening of left-wing attitudes, where people used to, for example, become more conservative as they got on the property ladder and so forth. Well, they can't get on the property ladder, and their left-leaning views are not mellowing over time. And the Tory party's had 13 years to take account of this fact. Their voter base is getting very old and is dying off, and it's not being replenished by youth of today. And yet they've done nothing to try to tackle this increasing woke madness that's infected all of our public institutions.
Yes, no, I know. It's a bit worrying, isn't it? I can't wait for the trans ideologists to get their hands on the mummified Egyptian section at the British Museum and see what they come up with as to what was going on in Egypt in those dark days. But listen, Rafe,
I'm surprised we can still call them mummies,
I'm sure that'll change. Rafe, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum. There are some